The Doll's Curse. When Olivia and Mark moved into their new home, they discovered an old dusty wooden chest in the attic. Inside, among faded newspapers and moth-eaten clothes, lay an antique porcelain doll. Its eyes, an unnatural shade of deep blue, seemed to glisten under the dim light. Olivia shuddered, but thinking it was just her imagination, placed the doll on a shelf in their bedroom. That night, Olivia woke to the sound of soft whispers. She turned to Mark, but he was fast asleep. The whispers continued, growing clearer. A child's voice. "Mommy!" Her breath hitched. The voice was right next to her. Heart pounding, she turned her head slowly. The doll was no longer on the shelf. The next morning, Mark dismissed her fears, blaming stress from the move. But Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. She placed the doll back in the attic, locking the chest. But that night it returned, sitting on her nightstand, its glassy eyes staring directly at her. They tried to burn it. The flames licked hungrily at the porcelain, but when the fire died, the doll remained untouched. They threw it in the river, but by morning it sat in their kitchen. Then the nightmares began. Olivia dreamt of a little girl with hollow eyes, whispering in her ear, "You took my home. Now I take yours." Mark started sleepwalking, his hands clawing at his throat as if unseen fingers were choking him. Scratches appeared on their walls, spelling one word, "Mine." The doll's presence became unbearable. Objects moved on their own, shadows darted across the walls, and at night a soft giggle echoed through the halls. Olivia felt herself being watched constantly. One evening, she entered the bedroom and froze. The doll was on their bed, its tiny porcelain hands resting on her pillow. Mark became withdrawn, his eyes dark with exhaustion. One night, Olivia woke to find him standing by the window, whispering. His voice was hoarse, barely audible. "She's here. She's inside me." Desperate, they contacted a priest. As he entered the house, he turned pale. "This house, it's been cursed." He refused to stay overnight, advising them to leave. But they had spent all their savings on the house. They had nowhere to go. That night, Mark vanished. Olivia woke up to his side of the bed empty. The sheets soaked in something warm and sticky. A trail of blood led to the attic. Trembling, she followed it. Inside the attic, the chest was open, and the doll was gone. A faint giggle echoed around her. She turned. Mark stood in the corner, his back to her, his body rigid. "Mark?" she whispered. Slowly he turned. His face was pale, lips twisted into a grotesque smile, his eyes hollow and black. Olivia screamed and ran, but the attic door slammed shut. The giggling grew louder, overlapping, as if multiple voices whispered in unison. She banged on the door, but an invisible force held it shut. Then something cold touched her ankle. She looked down. Small porcelain fingers wrapped around her leg. She kicked and screamed, but more tiny hands emerged from the shadows, pulling her down. The last thing Olivia saw was the doll's face inches from hers, its lips moving as it whispered in her voice, "Mommy." When the neighbors found the house abandoned weeks later, the only thing they discovered was a single porcelain doll sitting on the bedroom shelf. Its deep blue eyes glistened, and its tiny porcelain lips were curved into a faint, knowing smile.